Hi, I'm Bob, and I wanted to walk you through the weaving of a very basic round reed basket. And I'm modeling the foundational parts of it off of the basket in Flo Hoppy's book, and it's called Double Triple Basket. And I'm going to do the same kind of overlaid base in just a basic 3 or 4 rod wale on the side, and then a different kind of rim than this. But I wanted to refer to this basket. If you have Flo's book, Contemporary Wicker Basketry, this is one of her baskets in it, and it's a little bit of a takeoff of that. And I just wanted to do a simple round reed only rim that doesn't have a thicker core in it. To begin, we cut 10 number 4 round reed spokes, 30 inches long, and then soak them and try to straighten them out a little bit once they're wet, and then lay 5 over 5 crossing in the middle and measure to see that you've got the equidistant on either side. And then take a very, very damp, wet number 2 weaver and begin weaving over and under each group of spokes, and it's called weaving in the slath, and you'll see that in Flo's book. And you do 4 wraps of this, as snug as you can get it, not so that it doesn't each row doesn't overlap on the previous row, but side by side. Make it snug. And I'm weaving counterclockwise because I'm left-handed. And if you're right-handed, weave the other way, the other direction. Once you've woven 4 rows around the groups of spokes like that, then start to separate your spokes little by little and weave Japanese weave, which is over 2 and to the back and under 1, and then come forward. Over 2 and back and under 1 and forward, and just do that round and round and round. Over 2 and under 1. That's a Japanese weave, and keep it very, very close to the middle and very, very snug, and just continue that on out of the basket. As you're weaving this, make sure that you're moving the spokes laterally to the side and support them with your fingers as you're bringing the weaver in and out. So here you'll see I'm moving these spokes sideways just enough to get the weaver up and through to the front, and then I turn it and hold the 2 spokes close to each other that it goes over and then back, and I'm bracing the spoke that it's coming up behind. So I'm weaving the weaver in front and over and back, but I'm not bending the spokes forward or back. I'm keeping them straight on a level plane. As you're weaving the base, make sure you keep it nice and snug and tight, and then separate the spokes so that they're all equidistant and go out in a star pattern. And don't forget to wet your reed as you go, and make sure you spray it so that the weaver, mostly the weaver, stays nice and flexible. As you're weaving the base out, by the way, we're going to weave this out to 4.5 inches in diameter. And so I've been weaving from this side. This is the inside of the basket, and the spokes will bend up this way. But if I turn the basket base over, you'll see that little end that we started with that's sticking in the back. And I'm just going to trim the end to a point and take my crimping tool and open up one of this group of weavers and just slide that end underneath it and hide it nice and neatly in the back. And then with my clipper, just cut the end off. That way it's nice and neat looking on the bottom. Then you can see I've used this weaver up and I've come to the end here. So what I'm going to do is do a hidden join. So I'm gonna, where the weaver goes over to and in, the spoke that it goes in against is where it's gonna get tucked in, and I'm gonna crimp and just make a little elbow and cut the end to a point. Open up the hole in the space next to that spoke where it goes in against. So it went over to and in, and that's the spoke space where I'm going to tuck it. And I'm going to bend this and just tuck it in there. I got to turn it over to do it. And you can see where it's tucked in right there. And then the new weaver, I'm going to tuck in the same spoke space, the same space, but the opposite spoke in there. That's where the new piece is going to go. So I'm going to take my newly soaked weaver and insert it right in the spoke space, right opposite where the other one ended. And then I'm going to continue and go under one and out and keep going over two and under one until I finally reach about 4.5 inches of diameter from one side to the other of the base. As you see, as I'm weaving the base, it's slightly doming out with the inside bulbed up a little bit. We call that doming, and that gives the outside of the basket base a good foot to sit on. And when I weave it, I kind of weave it up against me, and I go over and under like this. And this is sort of the position I like to stand and weave these bases. I just find it's much easier to brace the base. And I weave with the inside of the base facing me, and it slowly domes slightly outward as I weave. Not significantly, just a slight bit of dome curve. When you finish weaving the base to 4.5 inches in diameter, turn it over with the center pointing down. And if it's domed a lot, just give it a slight rolling push down to help flatten it out just a little bit so it's not domed too severely, and it should look about like that. Now you want to turn it upside down, put it in your water basin and soak it, because you want to soak the heck out of the spokes where they come out of the weaving, because we're going to be crimping and bending them up the other way in a moment. Also, in addition to soaking the base, soak 4 pieces of number 4 reed that can wrap around the base 1.5 times. So maybe it's, I don't know, 12 to 18 inches long, but soak 4 pieces while you're doing that. And then once this is soaked, take the wide part of your crimper and very carefully crimp each spoke going around the base where the spoke comes out of the base weaving. And you just go down and lightly crimp it, because we're going to be bending these up, and we want to create a little bit of a crease so that it will bend easily. Just crimp lightly, but enough. You'll feel it squeeze. You'll feel the reed give with the water. And do it at the wide part of the crimper, not the narrow part, because you don't want to cut the reed off. If you do cut it, get another piece of spoke material, soak it, and insert it into the spoke space right where the other spoke is, and cut off the old piece. Once you have crimped all these, make sure that your basket is facing with the inside facing up, the domed part facing up, and then slowly bend the side spokes up. This is called upsetting the spokes. And you go around and very carefully bend them up, and you'll feel them sort of slowly crease. The slower you go, the less chance you'll have spokes cracking or breaking. If you feel the cracking or breaking, you might want to put them back in the water a little bit longer. And some reed material is just drier than other reed material. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take all my spokes, gather them up, and then tie them up and let them sit that way for a minute. And then get your other 4 pieces of number 4 reed, and we're going to do what we call a 4-rod locking coil, and it's 1 woven row around the base, and it gives a nice foot for the basket to sit on. So I've had my reed tied up, the spokes tied up, and I'm going to untie them, let them relax, and I'm going to take my 4 pieces of reed that I had soaking and put them into 4 consecutive spoke spaces. You're not tucking them inside. You're just placing them in the spokes like this, with the underneath bottom of the basket facing you and the spokes facing away from you. And then you want to hold them with your finger down like this and take, if you're left-handed, take the rightmost number 4 weaver and go over 3 spokes and behind the 4th spoke. And you want to sort of push the spokes away from you and hold them down when you're doing it like this. Then take the next weaver and go in front of 3 spokes, behind the next one, and down. So it should look like this. And keep going all the way around the basket, pushing the spokes away from you and supporting the spokes. Don't let the spokes bend except for where you've creased them. And the point of this is to lock this down so it holds the spokes up and it gives a nice foot to the basket base. When you finish going all the way around the basket, the weavers that you're weaving, stop them when they're in the 4 spoke spaces immediately preceding where you started these weavers. So in the spaces where you started, the 4 spaces behind that, stop there and then take your leftmost weaver, and if you're right-handed, it's the rightmost weaver, and go in front of 3 spokes and behind one, and then hold the little end from where you started weaving and tuck this weaver underneath that in the space underneath. So it'd be just like that. This what I'm wiggling right now is the initial end, and then this is what I just inserted down in there. And it goes right underneath that weaver so they sit parallel to each other in the same space. Then take the next weaver in front of 3 spokes, behind a spoke, and then lift the next end and go underneath the end and go right in that same space and push it down. And do that for each of these for all 4 ends. And what you should end up with is it looks like this. So that's the way it should look when you finish. You got the ends on the inside and the ends on the outside. And then you want to put the basket on its side and just give both ends opposite each other that go through the same space. Pull them both at the same time to make it snug and gently push down so they sit parallel to each other, not on top of each other. Once that's nice and snug, then you can gently and carefully cut the ends off. And on the bottom, take your clipper and just slide it parallel to the rest of the weaving and around the reed that's sticking up and cut. Cut, cut, and cut. Don't lift the reed aggressively and pull it up because then it'll pull back in. Likewise, in the inside, you just lay your clipper gently on top and just cut, 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 cut. Just cut each of the ends off. Be careful not to cut any spokes. And that's what we have. We have the basket and that 4-rod locking coil, and that'll give us a nice foot to sit on. Now we're going to soak 4 weavers, and I'm going to take 2 colored weavers and 2 natural weavers, and we're going to weave the side weaving, and it's called a 4-rod whale, and the pattern is over 2 spokes and under 2 spokes. So I've got my 4 weavers. I've got 2 teal colored weavers and 2 natural weavers, and I'm going to alternate them. So I'm going to do teal, natural, and I'm going to take my basket base on its side, and I'm going to put teal, natural, teal, natural. I'm going to put the ends in 4 spaces like that, and I'm going to hold them down with my fingers, and then I'm going to be weaving over 2 and under 2. So I'm left-handed, so I'm going to go to the left, taking the rightmost weaver first and go over 2 spokes and under 2 spokes. Then I pick up the next weaver and I go over 2 and under 2. And what you want to do is push the spokes away from you so they're almost perpendicular to the base, going straight up, and push down on that row as you're weaving. You want to cinch that down snug. Then pick up the next weaver. So if you're right-handed and you're weaving the opposite direction, you want to take the leftmost weaver each time and pick it up and go in front of 2 and behind 1. And you just go over 2 and under 2 spokes all the way around and around and around. And this is called continuous weaving. So we're not going to stop or do anything in particular when we get around to where we started. We're just going to keep on going and keep on going. And what the shape that you want is you want your spokes to go almost perpendicular straight out, but just with a slight lean outward, and I mean slight, and keep pinching down and packing your side weavers like this as you go. As you weave up the side, don't forget to use your spray bottle and periodically keep your weavers damp so that they stay wet. And this is roughly the angle at which your spokes should be going up. And you'll notice that there's starting to see a vertical band of the teal and the natural color because this is a 4 weaver pattern, and the spokes, there are 20 spokes which are evenly divisible by 4, which creates a vertical color band. We can talk at other times about how to create other visual color patterns on the side, but keep weaving up for maybe 3 or 4 inches up the side, but don't go any further than that. I just wanted to point out that as I'm weaving up the side and I'm going over 2 and under, I'm always pinching this down, pinching down to keep this very, very tight and compact. We want to make sure that the spokes are aimed away from you and going at the right angle all the time, that they're always equidistant, and use your fingers down near the bottom of the spokes here to control the angle and the tension. And then always pinch down so it stays nice and tight. If I didn't mention it, these side weavers, the teal and the natural, are number 3. They're the number 3 weavers. And here I've sort of finished up my teal. I've run out of teal. So what I want to do is again do that hidden join. So when I take my teal weaver and I'm going to go over 2 spokes and in, I'm going to, the far spoke that it goes in against, I'm just going to lightly crimp my weaver, cut it just past it, lift the little elbow, and slide the elbow, the end, down into the spoke space in the one that it went in against. And then my new weaver, I'm going to cut the end and make a nice little elbow on my new weaver here. I'm going to just crimp it, make a nice little elbow. And I'm going to take that elbow and tuck it into this space, the same spoke space, but the opposite spoke from the other end, and just slip it right in along with that spoke, and then continue behind 2 and out. And then I just keep on weaving. So I've woven up exactly 3 inches, no more than 3 inches. And you want to end the weavers where your original weavers started. And if you look down at the bottom, you'll see this one spot where there's 2 weavers, like the teal weavers are almost doubled up there. And if you look on the inside of the basket, you'll see where your ends were started, and those 4 spokes, you want to visually identify those 4 spokes, and the first of those spokes is where you're going to end your first weaver in your weaving. So you go over 2 and in, and when it goes in and if it hits that very first spoke where your ends started, then crimp and tuck it there, and do that for the 4 subsequent spokes. So you go bend it, tuck it, and put it in that spoke space. And then you go take the next weaver over 2 and behind 2 and in, and then crimp it, cut it, and tuck it. And do that for all 4 weavers until they're all woven in. So it goes over 2 and in, crimp it, cut it just past that spoke, and then tuck it into that spoke space. and then the last one. So all 4 weavers have ended in that same spot of the 4 spokes where all your initial ends started at the beginning of the basket. Then once you do that, grab it and push down and take up any extra space and pack your side weaving really, really well. You want to put your palm on the bottom and really squeeze it down tight. And then after that, you want to soak the spokes, not the entire basket, but take your basket and sort of tilt it and put it in your bucket of water and roll it like this so the spokes themselves get very wet, especially right here where they come out of the weaving. You just don't want to soak the heck out of the rest of the basket. So put it in your bucket of water and soak it like that. Once the spokes are nice and wet, you want to just go around and with the wide part of your crimper, you want to very carefully crimp each spoke. Just crimp it, you don't want to cut it. And go all the way around and crimp each spoke carefully. And then we're going to do row 1 of a 3-row woven border. It's a very, very simple border. And borders, rims, basket rims that are woven have so many variations. There are lots and lots and lots of rims. And in Flo Hoppy's book, she has many of those rims in there. So the first thing we're going to do is take any spoke you want and go behind 2 spokes and out. And take the next spoke and go behind 2 and out. And then the next spoke behind 2 and out and go all the way around the basket, just laying the spokes down, going behind 2 and out so that all of the spokes ultimately are kind of sticking on the outside. So you do this going all the way around. And I'm kind of moving sort of quickly so I can show you how to insert the ends at the beginning. When you get them all down and you've got 2 spokes left, you want to go back up your first 2 spokes just a little bit, kind of bump them out so you can see there's like a space. And you want to take this spoke and go behind 2 and up and underneath the first space and out. So it's as if it goes behind 2 spokes and out, and then take the next one and go in the next spoke space so they're all nice and tight like that. That's row number 1. Row number 2 is you take each spoke and you go over 2 spokes, hold the spokes up and go in the space of that second spoke. Just like that. And leave this one bumped up a little bit. Then take your next spoke and go over 2 and in. The motion is over 2 spokes and in. And leave these last 2 bumped up so you know where to go when you get all the way around, what to do with the last spokes, because they're going to go in these spaces. Then take the next one and in. And the rest of these you can make sort of snug as you go over 2 and in. You can make that snug like that. So over 2 and in, and you're always going over 2 spokes, lifting that second spoke and going exactly into the same space that it's in to get to the inside of the basket. Over 2, lift that spoke and go in the same space. And do that all the way around until all the spokes are on the inside of the basket. When you get all the way around to the end, those 2 bumped up spokes will tell us where we put the last 2 spokes to complete that row. So these are the last 2 spokes, and I'm going to take this one and go over the other spoke and then over one of the bumped up ones and into that space right there where that spoke came out of. And then take the last spoke and go over those 2 bumps and in the second spoke space. And then tighten them all down. Give it a pinch and a snug all the way around. And that is rim row number 2. And the last row is over to and in on the inside of the basket, where you pick up 2 spokes and take your spoke. If you're left-handed, it's the rightmost spoke. If you're right-handed, it's the leftmost spoke, excuse me. I'm left-handed, so I'm picking up 2 spokes, and the spoke to the right of it, I'm moving over and placing it down inside the basket. Then I lift up the next spoke, moving to the left, pick up the right spoke, curve over them, and push down in. And I want this row to be snug up. I'm going to keep lifting the other 2 spokes and making it snug. So I lift the next spoke and go over 2 and down, over 2 and down. So if you're right-handed, what you're doing is you're picking up 3 spokes and taking your leftmost spoke and going over 2 and down. Then pick up your next spoke to the right and then take your left one and go over 2 and down, and so forth, all the way around. And then at the very end, very similar to the other rows, you just want to follow the last 2 spokes are going to go underneath the 2 that you started with right there. So at the beginning, I'm back around all the way around. I'm going to put my first of the last 2 spokes over the 1 spoke, and then just gently lift slightly the first spoke that's folded down in there. And then I'm going to lift the last 2 spokes in that spoke space and put the final spoke in there. And I'm going to tighten it all down with my fingers. And that is the woven basket. And then all you do is go around and trim off your ends on the inside. Don't lift the ends aggressively, but just lightly, just trim underneath like that. Trim all the way around, and you have a wonderful beginner round reed basket. Isn't that fantastic? Once you have all the inside ends all trimmed down and everything is snug, you can give the basket a little pat and make it nice and level on the ground. And then if you have those ends that were still sticking out on the inside where you started your side weavers, you can cut those off. But that's your finished basket, and you should be very proud of your first round reed work. Congratulations on weaving your round reed basket.